Hi, I'm J.C. Vaughn from the Overstreet Comic Book Price Guide, but tonight I'm here to talk about writing Stargate Atlantis and Stargate Universe comics for American mythology. You're listening to the MacGyver Podcast with Mac Jackson.
Hi, I'm Richard Dean Anderson.
Name's MacGyver.
Colonel Jack O'Neill, SG-1.
My name is Pratt. Ernest Pratt.
I always get a happy, tingly feeling when I see those guys.
Name one contract that I failed to execute.
MacGyver.
Oh, here we go.
You're a target. And I don't intend to miss.
Over my rotting corpse. I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? Glowing eyes, cliche behavior, evilness, that kind of thing.
Is mental illness contagious?
You think?
You can do anything you want to do if you put your mind.
Well, you do have a penchant for pulling brilliant ideas out of your butt. Head. Out of your head when we need them. Oh, stuff's already here. I just find a different way to use it.
I like your attitude.
Permission to take a team through the Stargate, sir.
Hi, everybody. This is Mac Jackson. Welcome to another fun episode of the MacGyver Podcast. I am lucky enough to have someone who I've wanted on the podcast for a while, actually. And I'm not kissing butt. It's true. J.C. Vaughn, who, if anybody is a Stargate fan, will... Actually, there's going to be a lot of kissing butt, but it's all sincere. You will recognize his work on Stargate Atlantis and Stargate Universe comic books, for which I'm eternally grateful. And he has a new comic book coming out called Vampire PA.
Yeah, Vampire PA, the newest one is called Vampire PA Bite Out of Crime.
Nice. Oh, so here's we're going to delve into lots of stuff, but I want to talk about that first if we could. Also, do you go by JC or is it Jeff?
And when people are talking to me, Jeff, JC, Jeffrey, or Tex,
Okay.
occasionally, hey, you, or
Sure.
if you're with Billy Tucci, the creator of She, it's you there. But in print, it's always JC. I don't know why I started that, but
Well, it's a
long time
literature
ago.
thing. You know, it sounds high end if you use initials as opposed.
Yeah,
to,
I did a bunch of stuff, and it started really at my college newspaper. One of the other guys got a little bit of a promotion. He started using his middle initial, and so I changed from Jeff to J. Curtis, just to show him up, and then it became JC after that, and that very much stuck with my my friends.
That's nice. You know, it's like I said, it sounds like, you know, we got JC to write this book, you know.
Yeah, it's decent that way, and also makes for a great stylized signature.
That's true. That's true. When I was young, my aunt, you know, I drew before I wrote. I had dreams of being an artist. And my aunt would be like, well, you have to work on your signature and doing your initials to write in the corner of your drawing. So I remember going, oh, okay. You know, so yeah, I know what you mean. It's neat when you can play with the style. In
one form or another, I knew from some degree from third grade on, and certainly from the summer that Star Wars came out in 1977, I knew that I was going to be a writer. I didn't know what I was going to write. I just knew that was it. And my senior year in high school, I just finally had a talk with myself about my atrocious handwriting. And I have pretty decent handwriting now as a result of that. I really worked on it. And the reason I worked on it was because I'm going to sign people's books.
Really?
Yeah, it's vanity, man. Absolutely pure vanity.
But it worked.
It did. It absolutely did.
It would be like that nagging thing that bugs you in the back of your head.
And my artist, Vincent Spencer, is my partner on a project called Zombie Proof. I mock his signature all the time. I said, people wait in line for this, and yet it's distinct. Nobody can duplicate it. But it's just like they're not going to remember what it is.
Well, tell everybody about the premise for Vampire PA.
Vampire PA was originally a 3-issue miniseries in comics, which was before that based on a short story, and it is the story of a guy named Dean Marklin, who is an HVAC repairman in Dormont, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And it's one town over from where I grew up. It had an old movie theater that I was in love with. I'm still in love with it, even though they tore it down the day after my first issue came out. It was where I saw Young Frankenstein. It was where I saw The Three Stooges. It was a 1928 neighborhood movie theater with a balcony, with a formal stage, with a pipe organ.
Oh, I love that.
From the silent movie era, and that had been restored in the 70s. And it really was a wonderful place to grow up seeing movies. It was owned by this mysterious guy who lived just around the corner from my neighborhood, and his backyard paralleled or intersected rather all of our backyards. It was very long. And we didn't know much about him or anything else like that, except he drove a Cadillac, and he was like one of the first people we saw with a garage door opener.
Oh, okay.
Weird crap that sticks in your head, right?
Oh, yeah.
But that movie theater I was so fond of, and then it was sat idle for many, many years. And as I was driving by back one time when I was back visiting friends and family in Pittsburgh, it occurred to me very logically, what if it's full of vampires?
Sure.
And what would the circumstances be, and how would we change that? And so Dean actually becomes a rather instinctive and effective vampire hunter. His new girlfriend, Dee Dee, and his boss, Scuba Dave, from the HVAC job, sort of drift into this with him, and they now all have a second career of helping him fight rid suburban Pittsburgh of the vampire menace.
That's cool.
And it's a lot of fun. There's the only name dropping that goes on is real Pittsburgh stuff, real locations, real street names, things like that. I use fake extensions of real buildings. Like suddenly this building's twice as wide, and my company, a real Dormont landmark, they occupy the other side of it. That's not real, but
okay.
The way the Brendan and Brian frame draw it looks like it's just one big thing, and it's just phenomenal. And I got to say, in reality, I was so proud that we had preserved it in its image when the week after our first issue. It got torn down for a new CVS, and nothing against CVS, but
but it's not a movie theater.
It's not that theater. So the new one is, I guess I should say, the main villain of the piece is a vampire queen named Jocelyn, and she keeps on making truces with Dean, and basically to eliminate her rivals. And one of the things that always cracked me up when I was a kid, and still does, is that really nobody talks about how Vampirella's dressed.
Right.
And so Jocelyn's always wearing these outrageous outfits, only people notice. Like, where could she be going in Dormont dressed like that? That kind of comment, Yeah. And I enjoy that. And the series, the original miniseries ended, and then last year we did a Kickstarter to do a trade paperback collection of it. It was funded. We were able to spend a little bit of extra money and get really nice cover treatments on it, and everybody really received it really well. And the Brendan and Brian and I wanted to do more. My other partner on it is a longtime friend of mine, Mike Soloff, and we decided, put our heads together, and Mike, was willing to pay for the colorists while we were waiting to do another Kickstarter. And it is a new challenger to Jocelyn's dominance of the vampires, and it's Al Capone.
Get out of here. Oh, I love that.
Vampire.
See, that's the fun. I mean, you're just describing the first issue, and you're already world building.
Yeah.
You know, which
Yeah.
I could see it as a TV show. God
Well,
willing.
the great thing about it is Bo Smith, who created Winona Earp in comics, and now, of course, it's a good show on Sci-Fi and pretty popular on the streaming services too. We were interviewing Bo recently, and he started talking about Vampire PA and Zombie Proof, and talking about how what I write is ready for television. Now, the funny part for that is, because I'm a big television fan, I can do the cadences of that. I did. We adapted. Not adapted. That's the wrong word. We did news stories for 24,
Right.
based on the Fox show.
Right.
Mark Haynes and I, who's my co-writer on Stargate, we did that before we ever did Stargate. And when
I have those.
When we hear from Fox, email that we weren't supposed to be forwarded, your guys nailed it. You know, that's pretty great. And we also ended up hearing that directly from some of the guys from the show, directors and producers and writers, and that's a great feeling. Now, to my mind, if you can't get Jack Bauer's cadence in your head, you don't need to be writing that comic book.
There, thank you. Except, you know what?
You need to pass on the gig if you can't do it.
I'm with you.
And the Stargate stuff, to sort of lead into that. I do want to say one more thing about Vampire PA.
Yeah.
The Kickstarter ends tomorrow. We're doing a 1-week Indiegogo to follow that. We've sort of discovered through a lot of research that there's, just like everything else in life, just like politics and just like this, you have people who are loyal to one thing or the other, and they don't necessarily cross the platforms. And it was very surprising to me to find this out. But we just watched Billy Tucci do 30-some thousand for Zombie Sama on Kickstarter, and then turn around and do it again on that. I'm not looking to raise anywhere near that kind of money. I won't say no to it, by the way.
Right.
But when he moved over to Indiegogo, I will tell you bluntly, I had no idea that there were adherents that, you know, just like some people want Chevy and some people want Ford, and on the negative side, you know, the rest of society is so freaking polarized. So why not crowdfunding, right?
Sure.
So I'm a big believer in, unless your character is political, which is fine, absolutely fine.
Sure.
Unless your character is political, I don't really want to hear your political agenda, whatever side you're on, through the character, through the story, stuff like that. Matter of fact, you're going to be more successful talking to me if you don't tell me what your politics are. You're going to stand a chance of persuading me. I always use for an example that in terms of support of the military, I would definitely be on the conservative side. I was raised by a dad that had been in the military. My brother spent his 20-year career in the military, very pro-military. My favorite war comics are Harvey Kurtzman's EC stuff from the 50s, which are very clearly anti-war comics.
Right.
Because this is a guy that never forgot sermon is second, story is first.
That's right. I was going to say,
go ahead, please.
One of the versions of that, for me, that I always go back to is Harry Chapin. Harry Chapin said he used to be known as Gapin' Chapin back in the 60s, which is why you never heard of him. Because he'd be singing, isn't the world, if only the world were as wonderful as I am.
Yeah.
And nobody wanted to hear it because he was preachy. But then once he started to write more subtle and tell a story about somebody without politics or whatever, make himself the villain, now people get influenced.
Yeah, it's absolutely the case. There's a simple example of this from comics that's been translated into film, and that's Stanley and Jack Kirby with the X-Men. They were talking about race. They were talking about race. And they made them mutants and they gave them powers. But what were they talking about? Right. But they got a chance to deliver those stories to people who might have bristled if you said to them, "Hey, I want to talk to you about race."
Right. Exactly. Yeah. They made it fun.
And they didn't abandon their calling. They strove toward it. That kind of stuff. But so anybody wants to jump in and join us on Indiegogo or whatever like that, we are glad to have them.
What are the names?
It's Vampire PA Bite Out of Crime.
Okay.
Is what to look for on either Kickstarter or Indiegogo, and the main 2 issues will be available in comic shops. I think they're in the May issue of previews. Okay. Now they don't have any of the tchotchkes, they don't have any of the extra stuff with them, sure. All that. But if somebody's looking for that, I don't want to talk anybody out of supporting us, but I like to be real honest about what's going on there. But. Yeah. All right, back to 24. So we got the great comments on that. We had done together with a friend named Jim Kohoric in 99-2000. We had published Battlestar Galactica, all a side job for all of us, and it was a great learning experience. Mark and I learned working together because Jim had a family and we were single guys. And so we'd be like 2:00 in the morning, lettering the art that had just come in that had to be the printer the next morning, and doing rewrites where it's sort of where Mark asked the greatest comic book question that's ever been asked: which one of these 4 panels is panel 6? But it led us to when we had this opportunity to write Stargate. We both knew we were fans. Mm-hmm. We had been roommates in Baltimore. Mark lives in Los Angeles. I live in New York. And when SG1 was on, and also when 24 debuted, and we knew each other's voice on this kind of thing. Mark's a real detail mechanics of how this thing works kind of guy. I'm a more story guy. I'm definitely more of a comic book guy. He's more of a live action guy.
Sure.
And we just knew that everything we loved about Stargate, starting with SG1, was that the characters remembered stuff from episode to episode.
Yep.
And the continuity was as a writer, the thing that held my attention. Mm-hmm. Great performances all the way around.
Oh, sure.
Super casting.
Yep.
Clever stories. Great action. Good science fiction. But the fact that the characters remembered, like, oh, hey, to me, when they show up and they're dealing with Wormhole Extreme.
Okay.
And he sees Tilk and he says Murray. Which is Jack had introduced him in the original episode.
Yep. I got a guy at work who I've turned on to, he started joining us at lunch. And inevitably, what kind of shows do you like? I said, okay, I will give you the best show. And this is not me being partial, because I've heard it by smart people. It will ruin you for any other show that isn't up to par. Like, you think you know good TV. Well, watch SG1 and then come back to me, and now you'll compare everything else in your life to SG1. So he scoffed. Well, long story short, it's only been a month or two, and he's on season 5. And he just watched Worm, because he'll come in at lunch every day and go, all right, here's the one I saw last night. And, of course, I know them by heart and by the title.
Backwards and forwards, sure, of course.
And he'll go, I just saw the one where they're making a TV show. I said, Wormhole Extreme. He's like, yeah. And he turns to me and goes, Murray. So that scene, he remembered. And he loves, he's smart enough to love all the details that we do. Because
I think that's the thing that Mark particularly is a very experienced Trekkie, very active in Star Trek fandom and things like that. And we had done several years as pitching writers on Star Trek Voyager, and I didn't sell anything, but we did have a really good experience with that. And then Mark continued on to Enterprise. I bailed for a variety of reasons, largely doing with I needed to make some money. But Mark kept going on it, and really, I mean, he made a cut that was down from like 100 some writers to like 15 that were outside writers on that. And we were always talking plot. We were always talking that, and it was inevitable that the conversation would come back to SG1 and then the spinoffs. because each of them has their own thing.
Sure.
The first season of Atlantis, fell in love with it from the beginning. First season of SGU, I watched because my friend Ming was on it.
You knew her already?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we went to junior high and high school together.
She's a sweetheart.
And she's an awesome actress. I saw her in South Pacific in 9th or 10th grade. And that stage is still there. Matter of fact, it's just recently been redone. And she has progressed from As the World Turns and selling Asian-themed rice dishes for Uncle Ben's.
Yeah.
To being a really tremendous actress. I remember just crying my eyes out at Joy Luck Club, man.
I have to see that.
First, I'm at a chick flick, and second, I'm just sobbing. It's just hysterical.
I just watched listened to a podcast called "This Movie Changed Me," and their latest episode was on the Joy Luck Club.
I got to tell you, as a writer, there's something that really grabs me about that, and because it's these micro chapters in the book, because there's 4 younger characters and 4 older characters. They're moms, and I looked at it, and there's just no way that you're going to be able to adapt that to the screen. And Amy Tan and Ron Bass just killed it, man. It was just brilliant screenplay. And I would have never seen it if I hadn't read the book, which I never would have done if I didn't know she was going to be in the movie.
Right.
And the fun thing is for me is that she's a legit geek. There's nothing fake about it.
Right.
She was, if you can imagine, in high school, we're talking gangly guys, tall guys, short guys, fat guys, and one hot Asian chick. That's the science fiction club.
Sure. Yeah. No. I've watched her since way back when. Even I remember the commercial. I remember, the soap opera, and I remember thinking, okay, she's going to stick around. She's not someone who is going to play the Oriental, sidekick or whatever. She's going to lead stuff.
Yeah. And what's great for me is the first big science fiction convention I ever went to, she and my best friend and I went to. And Buster Crabbe was on stage talking about playing Flash Gordon, battling Ming the Merciless. And we're, I don't know, the last quarter of the room. And she starts yelling, I'm Ming. And we start shoving her to the floor, but there's all, the great thing is, like I said, if you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., she is the person least like her character.
Right.
She laughs from her toes. But she is a consummate actress. I've always dreamed of writing stuff for her because, hey, it's somebody I grew up with. How could I not? Right.
Yeah.
And so dialoguing her character in SGU. And I also snuck her into the cover of the Overstreet Comic Book Price Guide 45, battling the hordes of Hydra behind Captain America.
Nice.
To me, that's just sweet,
Yeah.
You don't get paid any extra for it. Yeah, but what the heck? I mean, when you know somebody that's that talented, and you have nieces who are that into Mulan and think you must be something special because you know that person. I mean, come on, that's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, anytime I saw her in an interview, I'm like, oh, you're real. I like you. We would get along really well.
And in all seriousness, the only way I got through the first half a season of SGU was because if I talked to her, I didn't want to lie and say that I was watching it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really didn't like it. And then sort of at the end of the first season, I thought, well, there might be something here. And what they did between the last quarter of season 1 and the end of season 2 was to make that some of the most riveting television that was on. And you have to be thankful that they were doing it on cable, because if that was broadcast network, it would have been canceled after episode 4.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And would have never had a chance. And of course, it still kills me how it ended. And
right.
And the fact that they didn't pull the trigger and do any TV movies to at least wrap it up or set up more or something like that was one of the great frustrations.
Agreed. Well, I mean, even Atlantis. Okay, so it ended with them in the Bay, San Francisco. Okay, all right, but that's only a pit stop. They weren't staying there.
Yeah.
So you're like, all right, and I love how the comic. Okay, let's take off from where we just left off.
We had a clearer path with the SGA because we didn't have to have a lot of artists jumping through hoops for likeness approvals.
Right.
Everybody and their brother on SGU got likeness approvals. And some of the more inconsequential ones, and not in terms of their worth as a person, but in terms of their character.
Sure.
Were real hang-ups.
Really?
Oh yeah. And we had a great artist finally pass muster on everything, and then he quit after the first issue because MGM's notes were so plentiful.
Right. Well, that was going to be my question, because I'll tell you, I first remember seeing your name, I think, on the 24 issues, and I didn't even watch 24 when it was originally on. I watched the first couple seasons after everybody was talking about it.
Sure.
And
that's how Mark came to it. My co-writer. Yeah, I had left my DVDs of season 1 on top of the television, and had driven from Baltimore up to Pittsburgh to visit my grandmother, and the cable went out that weekend, and I came back and his eyes were bleeding, and he was, just one more episode, please.
You got him hooked.
Yeah.
See, that's nice. So here's the thing, and you know this. Typically, if it's a comic that's a tie-in to a movie or a TV show, as fans, we're like, yes, give me more. Goodness, I want this. But I don't know, the people in charge don't care for quality enough, or aren't, usually you get it and it's a watered down, simplified, doesn't sound like the characters. You only have 22 pages, say, an issue.
Sure.
So if they don't lay it out right, well, not much can happen because a lot of it is dialogue or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I remember reading the 24 and going, wow, okay, this is the only one I ever saw before that I thought was done perfectly for a TV show was when they had the Quantum Leap comic book. And that felt like an episode of the television.
One of my favorite things that never came out was, I was really trying to break in at a higher level, and Acclaim Comics had the Sliders license. And while I don't think the series lived up to the pilot, and I really think that subsequent seasons weren't that great.
Right.
Okay.
That
said, the pilot was full of promise, and the concept was just awesome. So I had written a bunch of pitches for that, and I really liked a couple of them. And as a matter of fact, there's a couple of them that I still like, 20 years later, right?
Yeah.
Acclaim called me, and I thought they were going to tell me, like, get lost, or, hey, we like this one. Instead, they said, hey, we really like what you've been doing. Would you like to pitch for a Sliders Quantum Leap crossover?
Oh, why did that not happen?
They thought they had the license, and they didn't.
Oh, okay. Because the people who did the comic book for Quantum Leap, they went out of business.
Yeah, innovation.
Yeah,
and there was they had some great stuff. And so I did a pitch, and I said, I hate when they use catchphrases from shows that they're just forcing it in there.
Yep.
My friend Jim was writing Army of Darkness, and his script was so good that I made him take out all of Ash's catchphrases because he didn't need them.
Right.
And
it didn't flow.
He so had the voice that his comic turned me into an Army of Darkness fan,
mm-hmm.
which I'm a big one now.
Sure.
And because his comic was so good. So that my goal is always to be in the same way. And so for the Sliders Quantum Leap crossover, I said, I'm not going to force anything in. And at the end of it was a 2-parter, right?
Okay.
At the end of the first part, there was only one possible dialogue line for Sam, and that was, "Oh boy."
Oh boy.
And I didn't write it to do that. I didn't force it in. That was the greatest feeling.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, you have, if you want to do licensed comics, you have to be willing to hear the way the characters speak, because that's what the fans know. And if you're a fan yourself, you know what it feels like when you're being insulted.
Right. Or talked down to, or pandering.
Yeah, talked down to is a big thing, sure.
The pandering. Well, like I said, other than the Quantum Leap book, up until 24, I really hadn't read anything that was done well. It felt like it was we have the license. I don't know. Get Jimmy on the corner, write something. I don't care. It's going to be approved. And like, do you remember, I don't know if you read it, but the original SG-1 comic books, they had set it up where they were going to do the pantheon of, instead of being the Goa'uld with the gods that they use, it was going to be the Greek gods that, you didn't know, but there's this other pack of Goa'uld that are Greek. And okay, so already you're off track. 2, nobody acted like they were supposed to. It was Jack, they had Jack yelling all the time for no reason. They had Daniel reading books. Teal'c didn't say much. Or when he did, you're like, that. Yeah, you're like, he wouldn't say that there. That's not his part. And then, again, 22 pages, not much would happen. So, okay, so you get through it, and I just think, I'm thankful that there's a SG-1 comic book. In my head, this will go on forever. And they did a follow-up to the Eris Bach one, the bounty hunter.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm thinking, this is great. We get the follow-up. People care. Nobody acted like themselves. And in the end, it's all about him pulling one over on Earth, by the way. He's at the base. And does something, gets away, and Jack, they have him go like William Shatner's Khan. He's Eris or Bach or whatever. And I went, you people don't know these characters. And then they would come out with one-shots where they did a Vala one, who 9 and 10 season we don't have to really discuss. And they did a Daniel miniseries. Well, Daniel his whole story was him off-world. You never saw the Stargate once he went through. He didn't wear his uniform, and he didn't act like Daniel. So somebody had the story and just picked Daniel to be there, right? And I thought, God, I'll write it. I'm a writer. You want to see it? I'll write it for free. Send it to you if you like it. Well, then they're coming out with, and this is when Universe came out. They were going to do an SG-1, an Atlantis, and a Universe.
Right.
And then it didn't happen. So then your stuff comes out, and again, I'm going to buy it because it's Stargate, and not recognizing your name on it from the previous stuff.
Sure.
And I go, okay, here we go. Doing it because I'm loyal and I'm, hopeful, but not really. Now here's where the butt kissing that's honest comes in. You guys, perfect. You're smart enough, first of all, to cram all the dialogue in because it doesn't feel crammed. It's natural. Like you said, you can hear their voice. I could see their twitches in their face as they say these things. And you even put in the pauses.
Yeah, I think that's really essential. The more you know a character, if you've got a show that's been on a year, you've got a lot more wiggle room.
Sure.
If you have a show that's been on 10 years or 5 years, you got a lot less wiggle room. Mm-hmm. If you got a show that's governed by real science and expectations of that in the science fiction, or establish parameters of the science fiction as all the universe, the Stargate universe, lowercase u, shows. We know how the gates work. We know this. If you're going to make the gate do something different, the characters better recognize that the gate is doing something different
and discuss it.
Yeah, and even be mystified by why something is going on. But as long as that's the case, that's acceptable. One of the things to us is there's a fundamental thing about writing for live action. Live action, you are not doing the way people really talk. You're doing the illusion of the way people really talk. There's a lot less interrupting. There's a lot less talking over each other. Than when we get excited in real life and talking at each other, that kind of stuff like that. There's much more of the concept of dialogue, which requires, 2 or more. The comic book is the illusion of real life dialogue.
Right.
And the best thing that ever happened to me was when Mark was my roommate. I was doing one of my indie comics called McCandleston Company, and he always did my lettering. And he left.
He laughed?
He left. He went away for the weekend, and I had to letter it. And so J.C. Vaughn, writer, meet J.C. Vaughn, letterer. And J.C. Vaughn, letterer was like wordy son of a bitch. And I actually now think it's like every guy who writes comics should have to try and letter one of his own pieces of crap, because it really made me start looking at brevity and how to get things across. And, then later on come up with this theory that it's the illusion of real dialogue. But let me ask you something, since you liked Stargate Atlantis.
Love. Talking about the show?
No, the comic.
The book.
The comic.
Love.
All right. From how important was it to you that we opened with the phrase previously on Stargate Atlantis?
You have to. You have to do that because, well,
we absolutely demanded it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you can't assume that you're okay. You and I know it. You and I know what happened before. We could talk about this forever, but Joe Schmo, who you want to buy the book, what if they never saw the show?
Yeah.
Now you're going to throw
what if they're just a casual fan, or what if they've had a lot of life events since the show was on? Maybe they love the show like you and I did, but they've had kids, they've had this, they've had, sick family members, stuff like that. Things fade from memory when they're not important.
And you go, wait, I remember it ended, but okay, well, how did it end? Well, we'll tell you. I would say it's brilliant, but it's a duh. Obviously, not enough people do that.
And the other thing is, that in and of itself harkens back to the show.
Yes. I could hear Tilk's voice going previously on SG-1.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then he'd do it.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, you know why? Because it's appreciated. There's never a time where you go, it's not like the 80s flashback episodes where, why are they all sitting around the living room and doing a clip show? Why is it? No, those moments are necessary. That means they're warning you, pay attention. This scene or this line is needed for this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, what we did was we wanted to go from that. We wanted it to feel like when you read 3 of our issues that you had 1 episode.
Yes, without a doubt. And it was great.
I have a comic book retailer, a friend of mine, Alan Papperin, who runs a shop called the Comic Book Depot in Wonton, New York. And like many, many comic book retailers, he's a little bit jaded about content of comics.
What do you mean?
He's seen it all, done it all. He's been running a shop for 20 years. Nothing's new to him. And all that. And he goes, this should be a movie. They should make this a movie.
Without a doubt.
And I like, it's really funny. A jaded comic book retailer gave me probably one of my best reviews ever.
Yeah, right? Because I talking with people who I'm, if they trust my judgment, I always say I'm not going to steer you wrong, whether it be on music or TV or whatever. If I say, check this out, I'm putting myself on the line as far as in my trustworthy.
Oh, so sure, your reputation, sure.
If I tell somebody the best show you're ever going to watch is Stargate SG-1, at least the first 8 seasons are perfection. Well, when they come back to me, that's one of the things that they'll say is every episode, even though it's 45 minutes, feels like a movie, like Foothold. Remember the episode Foothold?
Sure.
Okay, that's a movie. You know why? Because it's self-contained. There's no Gould per se. You don't have to know anything before or after. And there it is. And I'm watching it, for the 100th time. But now my kids, my son's 10, my daughter's 7. Well, we're watching it. And when I met my wife, she had loved Star Trek Next Generation, thought that was the best until I got her hooked on. Until I said, you haven't seen SG-1 yet. So we're not even through the first season. And she goes, you're right. It's the best. And it is her number one favorite show. But we're noticing as we watch these now, because now the kids are really getting it. They're not just watching it and it's fun, flashy. They're going, oh, that's deep. Ooh, that's a time loop. That type of thing.
In the middle of my backswing?
Right. They see how epic each and every episode could be a movie.
Yeah.
Or should I say is its own movie? How many shows can you say does that?
Yeah, I think. Listen, I'm fortunate that I've got a bunch of shows that I've really loved, but we just did Atlantis and then SG-1, and sort of like, matter of fact, when we finished the comics, and I could watch Atlantis without looking for story points, and just watch it again. I really enjoyed that, and Rosina hadn't seen all of Atlantis, so that was a lot of fun.
You said you did SG-1.
No, I did. Meaning, I watched it after we watched Atlantis.
Okay, I was gonna say, wait, did I miss an issue?
I didn't get to write that yet.
Yeah, I know. But go ahead.
We'll see what happens there. Yeah. But going back and watching it, and knowing all the stuff that I know, knowing where it leads and everything like that, you still, even knowing that, it's impressive.
Right.
And that's pretty freaking cool, man.
I mean, you get excited because either for yourself to see it again or for whoever's in the room, you're like,
yeah.
Oh, see this guy? Oh, you're talking about planting seeds, right?
Yeah.
They would do that. They would talk about something in passing when you just think it's normal conversation. Oh, how we're working on the hyperdrive. All right, sounds like techno babble. 2 seasons later, they bring it up again.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, that's what made that ship?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what happened to the Gould ship that crashed. They took it, they salvaged it, but they don't have to spell it out for you every single time.
Yeah.
It just that's where, you put it together.
They're not cataloging gaseous anomalies.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am an old-fashioned Star Trek, we come in peace, shoot to kill guy.
Sure. You're right. Well, that was always the big criticism of Next Generation was let's sit around and talk to our bad guys.
Yeah.
As opposed to punch them in the face.
To be fair, and I absolutely do agree that is a real thing. But to be fair, if you're a writer and you've got Patrick Stewart reading the lines,
right? I'm with you. Yeah.
I mean,
we love Patrick Stewart.
So.
Well, for me, I talk about crossovers that sucked you in. I didn't watch Doctor Who. I've only watched a couple episodes of Next Generation, even though I bought them for my wife for Christmas or whatever. I got a couple seasons, like 3 seasons maybe. I hear it gets really good after a while, but didn't really. I always wanted to get into Doctor Who. I read the crossover that they did. Do you remember the crossover of
the comic book one?
Yeah.
I actually produced a variant cover of that for Jeppy's Entertainment Museum. I worked with Kelly Jones, the great Batman artist.
Sure.
And we did 3 of the Doctors as Holmes, Watson, and Lestrade, looking over the bodies of various Doctor Who foes.
Okay.
And that was a variant cover for that, exclusive to Jeppy's Museum. And so that was my little connection to that miniseries.
Well, that got me. Once I read that,
it's very clever.
I'm a sucker for time travel, and I'm a sucker for crossovers. It does clearly. I didn't even have to be a fan of either, and I thought I'll buy it. I love the idea. Well, right after that, it was right when the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who was coming about. So I went, all right, here we go. I'll give it a shot. Well, now we're a Whovian family. You know, we're all about it.
Tremendous stuff.
Right. But you're a Doctor Who fan?
I am a casual one.
Okay.
What's funny, in the Tom Baker era, my dad used to watch. Was on our PBS station in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Yep, me too. I'm in Scranton, so.
And okay.
Yeah, so it's the same channel 44 for us, and it would typically be Baker, and then sometimes you'd get the next Doctor.
Yeah.
5, you know. But I remember thinking, okay, well, in order to like Doctor Who, you love it because of the character. They'll make you love and cry over a character in one episode.
Yeah.
And mourn their death from one episode. But the downside is you cannot care about the mythology like you can with, say, Stargate.
And that's the thing that to some people is off-putting. It absolutely took a while for me to wrap my head around. It's still not exactly what I would call my cup of tea.
Right.
But some of them, particularly in the Moffat era, just
gut-wrenching,
killer stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Our favorite Doctor is 10, but it doesn't really matter, as even though he's your favorite, the writing would be Moffat. It's great stuff.
That's when you watch this stuff as a writer, you're always looking for, what are they doing that's pulling this chain and pulling this string and pushing this lever, and what are they doing that made me feel that way. And, And the great thing is when intellectually and you can totally see what they're doing and it still gets you anyway. Yeah. That's the greatest, man.
Right?
Turn it around when they start Sherlock.
Love Sherlock.
All right. So the whole first episode. Spoilers here.
Yeah, spoilers for people who
this
haven't
is definitely
seen
for anybody who's not seen it. I'm just gonna wreck it.
Yeah.
When the whole first episode, I think it's Moriarty, and it turns out to be Mycroft.
Right.
And we tend to watch a lot of crime procedurals. And we'll guess during the teaser who did it, and we're usually right.
Yeah, well, and it also depends on who the special, like if it's a name, a character actor, you go, that's the guy.
Yep, absolutely. And I am usually so delighted to be wrong.
Right.
And I was just grimacing because here we were getting two really good performances as Holmes and Watson, and they're going to screw it up by this being Moriarty, and it's Mycroft. Oh my gosh, I was totally wrong. And I don't think most people enjoy being wrong about a crime show the way that I do, because we usually figure them out.
And you want to be surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I know. I love that because you're right. You could tell you could tell when shows are done lazily or, poorly, or they're the things they care about is the wrong thing you should be caring about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We talked about that on this podcast, referring to the Not MacGyver show that's currently on television now.
You feel about that the way that I feel about Not Magnum.
Right. Oh, same thing. Same people. It's the same people.
Oh yeah, I know.
I mean, and it's funny too, because I could tell that it's the same writers on Hawaii Five-0, who then they took some of those writers and put them on Not MacGyver.
Yeah.
And now, okay, so let's get a couple others and put them on Not Magnum.
Yep.
And surprisingly, Not Magnum is between the two. Hawaii Five-0 I thought was good, but then they got lazy and it became.
5-0 was good the first season and a half.
Yes. And then
I think part of it was probably trading on, the one of the two best TV themes ever. But it not only got bad, it got insultingly bad.
Yes.
And it really professionally, you shouldn't criticize other writers like that. You don't know what kind of notes they're getting from the studio, what kind of notes you're getting from the network. And certainly the network is the one pulling the strings and saying what gets on.
Yep.
But they actually got insultingly bad, particularly considering the great actors that they have on the show and the set of Hawaii.
Right. Well, what they would do is with that, and you'll probably agree, they went, okay, wait, Danny and the lead, McGarrett. Yeah, I should just open my shirt and say McGarrett, because every time there's an action scene, he takes his shirt off and does something unnecessarily. Right? And so that, and they go, wait, these two are great together. They love each other, which is a good thing. But we have to have them bicker in every single episode. So people seem to like that. So they started to do that. And then the plot became the lazy part.
Yeah.
And then they started adding all extra cast members that weren't necessary.
Yeah.
Like, all right, you were charming in one episode. That doesn't mean we need to see you all the time, shrimp truck guy.
There was a very short-lived series from the guys that did Airplane called Police Squad.
Yes.
That became the Naked Gun movies.
Yep.
And
one season.
6 episodes.
Oh, sheesh.
And it was literally canceled in that day and age because you had to pay attention to it. They wanted Muzak television back then. And they always went to the same snitch. And you'd get, his name was Johnny, and they'd ask him like what's going on, they'd give him a $20 bill and he'd tell him that this might happen, blah 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 blah. And then they'd leave, and then like Dr. Joyce Brothers would come up and ask something philosophical, or a bishop would come up and say, I want to talk about life after death and all that. It was just, but it was always the same informant, right? Mm-hmm. The idea that on 5-0 that this, incredibly broad-based police organization that has all this latitude to do all these operations is getting all their information from one snitch.
Yeah.
It's just hysterical.
Yeah. And
he must be. I mean, literally, the guy must be He must be Moriarty.
Oh no, because remember the snitch. If you're talking about the shrimp truck guy, he's a good guy. Don't you understand? He may know all the crime, but he's still, love that. No, you don't. You're not supposed to.
If in the last episode you found out that he was really fat, it would totally redeem the whole series for me.
Yep, me too. Too. So I said,
I love the people they have on that show.
Right.
Great cast.
Right, without a doubt.
McBride.
Yes. With you. I agree. That was a good step up. Wasn't necessary for the show, but he's still a great actor. But okay, so I started to watch Not Magnum, and again, it's the same writers, and it's still lazy, and it's still, like predictable. And what they tend to do is, and again, I can go off on a tangent on just the not MacGyver of it all, besides comparing it to the actual MacGyver. I'm not even going to do that because that's too obvious. All they did was take the name, slap it on a new Hawaii 5-0 team. They should just call it California 5-0, because MacGyver is one guy who can do what an army can't. That's the appeal. He doesn't have a team, but okay, let me step away. The thing they do on this show, on Not Magnum, and Hawaii 5-0 has earned its family group. You get them being friends. But the other two, they tell you they're friends. They don't show you that they're friends. They don't take they have them run from somebody shooting at them. And as they're running, they're arguing with each other. That's not realistic.
Yeah.
You're not going to,
The whole thing is that a lot of people don't get how hard good relationships are.
Mm-hmm. That's a gold mine, though.
And that, look at how many TV shows, great TV shows, not just good ones,
right,
fall apart when the guy's no longer chasing the woman or the woman's no longer chasing the guy.
Sure, they're afraid of that. Cheers.
Remember Cheers? Cheers?
Yeah, with Sam and Diane, people are like, uh-oh. Remember?
But go a step further, and I mean, proving my age here, but Moonlighting.
I was going to say Moonlighting. That's the classic right there. Yeah.
And as a metaphor for the whole series at that point, they finally get together and they accidentally release the parking brake and drift downhill.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, were they aiming for the metaphor? And you know, that, I mean, that show had the greatest dialogue and I mean, they were shooting like something like literally movie length scripts for an hour TV show, because their dialogue was just bam, 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 so fast. And it's great. But I say this not about those people, but in general. TV used to be written by people who had been outside.
Right.
Now it's written by people who stayed inside watching a lot too much television.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't read the classics. They haven't read this other kind of stuff like this. And I'm not like, hey, you kids, get off my lawn.
No.
Old guy. But the life experience that goes into this, the fact that, yeah, you throw a switch when you are in a stable long-term relationship, that the dynamics are different. Then you have family driving you crazy. Then you're like desperately trying to get away with that person, to get out of the normal thing that your life has become. You think about, did I sign up for this? All these kind of great things. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not the same story anymore, but it is the same story.
Right.
Because
it evolves.
If you've got a relationship in some way or the other, whether you're winning the person's affections or keeping the person's affections, you are fighting for it, and it's a different thing, and the fight becomes different. But you know, you weren't fighting the Battle of Tobruk the entire part of World War II. You also had the Battle of the Bulge. You also had D-Day. You had all these other battles, but it's still the same war. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a really weird analogy. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. It works, because like what I was saying was, I watched a couple episodes of not Magnum. Okay, I think it's the least offensive, as far as they're basically copying real Magnum with a different guy. You know, you're not really getting.
Let me say this. Starting with the first episode, really bad copy.
Yeah, really bad copy. That was okay. You're gonna just keep smashing cars.
Start with the commercial, the teaser, the 2.5 minute or whatever it was that ran. And remember, they're talking, and he's got, I've got 4 friends, and here's Rick, here's TC, and literally out loud, I said, here's the guy who dies in the pilot.
Yep. Oh, without a doubt. And that's going to kickstart them and get them together. And now they're more cohesive, all because of this one guy dying. I could have written that in my sleep. And I think it was 5 episodes of Hawaii Five-0 3 years ago. You know what I mean?
It's just, you know, it's unfortunate, but let's talk about Stargate. We can love that.
Well,
I don't want to talk about stuff I hate.
Well, I'll tell you, tying it back to like what I'm writing, with relationships. I do the audio series, and I don't know if you've heard it, but the relationship, it's MacGyver and Jack O'Neill finding out they're twin brothers. Yeah, right? So because there's such a plethora of fuel there, and I don't obviously I don't step on any established, my whole goal for this is to give us all new stories of each series.
Of course.
But it's not all just today. This goes back to right after the 5th race. The 5th race is when he meets Thor in a scene that we don't see, because remember how they cut away to him now coming back after meeting Thor.
Yep.
Well, we didn't get to hear all the conversation.
No, so, matter of fact, that's where we would look for the rich elements of all of these shows.
Exactly.
Where there's stuff that we as audience members understood had to have gone on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where we didn't never necessarily see it.
And like, you know, Jack always said to Teal'c, I'm going to take you outside and show you around. Well, I would like to see those moments of Jack and Teal'c walking through a mall, or, you know, explaining stuff to him. So I use that as the launching pad for this. And as far as the relationship goes, they're not so tight in the beginning. And that's the fun. You need to have them be uneasy with each other. You need them to get along, but also clash over certain stuff and not wrap it all up in one episode. This is something that's going to take a lot of time. And I jump back between that that time frame to current day, where now years have gone by, and I can toggle back between the two to tell either one long story or some short stories. But my point is, what I'm driven to do is play out slowly and realistically how these two characters that I know so well, how would they get along?
I think. Listen, that's the real thing when you're talking about not only that character would never say that, the things that they would do, and when you put them in a distinctly new situation,
right?
I think that's a really big thing. Is it's got to come off to your fellow fans.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get to abrogate the fact that you are a writer just because you're a fan.
Right.
And you don't get to abrogate being a fan just because you're a writer. It's a balancing act, because you have to take a professional approach. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the writer should stop you from pandering. Mm-hmm. The fan should get you to try the stuff like, oh, everybody would love that.
Well, and that's the thing, because I don't feel like I'm in charge of the story. I feel like I'm, no pun intended, the gatekeeper or the flame holder to what would the characters. I'm just playing out what the characters would do, whether I want them to or not. They would act this way, as opposed to, wouldn't it be great to see Jack and Sam together? Yeah. Well, you can't do that during the first 10 seasons.
Yeah.
But guess what? Once he gets promoted to the Pentagon, now you can.
Yeah.
Right?
There's all sorts of possibilities.
So, but it has to be realistic. It has to be true to the character. And
absolutely the case.
If you've read any fanfic, per se, there's some who get that and some who go, no, I want him in a bunny suit. So that's the purpose of this story.
Yeah, there's the funny thing about doing the comics is there's elements of TV reality that jump in. Mm-hmm. If you look in the first story, back to Pegasus, mm-hmm. Jack is in it, but he doesn't appear.
Right, he's invisible.
And the reason for that is that, unlike the rest of the cast, they had approvals.
Right.
And MGM didn't want to go to him for a minor, to them, inconsequential scene. They wanted to have a series of pages. So we came up with a whole list of solutions about why, when Jack appeared in small scenes, we only used a handful of them.
Sure.
But
it kills me, by the way, that we don't get to I realize that, because I know if somebody said to Rick, "You mind?" You go, "Yeah, all right, whatever, as long as they don't look like crap." And I know he would, because I've met him, and he's such a sweet guy. But I remember being told this: the powers that be didn't want to. Oh, don't disturb the star.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
But I understood that. And I actually thought what we came up with was very funny, because it's a nod back to 200.
Yep.
Which anytime I'm depressed, pretty much I watch that episode. I just so many things. I understand it performed well on DVD. And there's just so many. When a Teal'c PI,
indeed, that GIF gets used all the time.
Yeah.
Somebody just sent it to me to respond. Indeed.
And it's just just a blast, And
I've gone through my head. You weren't there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that I think, if Stargate SG-1 had been allowed to run its natural course, we would have realized, and some of the people who are down on seasons 9 and 10 would have probably ended up lightening up, because it was and still could be the law and order of science fiction franchises.
Yes, without a doubt.
And because my first thing that I ever wrote about Stargate was an essay in the book Stepping Through the Stargate.
Mm-hmm.
I have such a problem with the lazy science fiction, military, adventure trope of "we need you back."
Okay.
The military is made up of hundreds of thousands of people who is, particularly when you get to the officers, are trained expensively to be the best they can be. They have well-rounded educations. If they've gone to the academies, they have incredible credentials.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's not there, they don't need this other guy back.
Mm-hmm.
There's an entire Stargate. There's an entire Star Trek series that's based on the principle they needed one guy back. And I'm saying, so in a galaxy, you need one guy.
You're just being lazy.
Now why Jack O'Neill's the exception, and they did need him back, because he's the only one that they knew had been through the Stargate, had commanded a unit through the Stargate.
Right. It makes sense.
They had the other survivors of his team, and they didn't know Daniel's still alive.
Right.
Okay. So,
and you had Carter, who nobody knew before, but she figured out how to make the gate work.
Yes. But you need this guy, and so my whole essay was about how normally it's just a bunch of BS, that "we need you back" thing, but in Jack's case, it was a real deal, and it's really funny. I got a decent pay for the essay, but the book itself has never sold to the extent of the advances. So I keep on getting these statements every year or every 6 months or whatever. I get a statement like, "No, you don't earn anything. No, you don't earn anything." You can stop sending it. I trust you guys.
Yeah. Tell me when I do earn something. Now you're just kicking up dirt in my face.
But that was years ago. That was actually my first Stargate thing.
Well, let me ask, because I'm always curious with like-minded people. And every time, by the way, just sidetrack, you get to do fun things from being friends with you on Facebook and Twitter and all. When you post a picture, I'm like, lucky son of a bee. Like, I didn't know you already knew Ming. So I thought that was like an extra thing. But like, you get to work where? You get to do what? Oh, so
yeah. Seriously, my worst day. I'm running a book I grew up reading.
Yeah. That's not.
And let me tell you, there's plenty of days where it's a job, because that's why they pay me.
Sure.
But on the other hand, look at the list of cover artists I've worked with in the last 10 years.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if have you seen the Firefly cover for this one that comes out in July?
Not yet. No.
Diego Galindo, who has done several now that the series has moved to Boom Studios. Diego's done several covers for them, and
I've loved them. I've seen.
If you've loved them, wait till you see mine.
Yeah,
I think it's the best thing he's done so far in the world of Firefly, and it is just freaking awesome, and it's exactly what I asked for, which nothing makes me the editor happier,
right,
than artists doing what I say. Darn it.
Yeah, I know. I know what you mean. To get like logo work, I'm like, okay, can we try this, please? Yeah. Please is always big, please, because they could say no.
But you look at the guys I've gotten to work with, and I've really been, running the day-to-day operations since number 40, so 9 years. And I mean, it's a freaking who's who of artists in my business. And I go in, we pay a very good rate. We try new things. Occasionally we get to do things that wouldn't normally get pulled off, and it's a blast, man. And yeah, the book still has to be put together. And let me tell you, it's looking like 1,260 pages this year. And yeah, that's all right. And it's a heck of a lot of work, and you got to sell a lot of ads to justify that.
Sure.
And I'm pretty good at it, but that's not my favorite thing. I want to sit around making up stuff. I don't want to. Right. I don't want to tell people like how many copies we're selling, and this is why you should pay me this much for this ad. But if you're a creator and you have the opportunity to have all this great experience, do what's necessary.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing too. I think what helps is if you have everybody that cares, that's not just doing the job because it's a job.
Yeah, let me tell you, our team is very small. It's 4 of us plus Bob Overstreet.
Okay.
And everyone is really into their gigs.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I mean, I always respect that.
My creative director and I have worked together for 20 years.
Oh, 22, really?
22 years. Yeah, I just hit 24. He joined after I'd been there 2 years.
Wow. That's what I was going to ask you. Let's go back. How did you? Okay, you were saying how you wanted to write since you were a kid.
Yeah.
For me, it was I thought I was going to draw until I realized that you don't have the control over what you draw. Because I went to Votech for commercial art. And the first day the teacher says, "Who here wants to be an artist?" We all raise our hand. She says, "Okay, you're not going to get work. You're not going to get work around here, so you're going to have to move. When you do get work, you're not going to get paid much. And it's not a steady gig. All right, let's get started." And we all just kind of went, oh. So, then you realize, okay, I don't get to just draw what I want. I have to draw what people want.
My standard joke is I'm the saddest thing of all, a comic book writer. Because we'd all like to have the talent to draw. Mm-hmm. If I could draw what was in my head and do it with any kind of expediency,
right,
I'd have a zillion more comics to my credit.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I have to figure out how to get across to an artist
what you want,
what I want, and convince them to do what I want.
Here's panel A. Yeah. Here's the dial. I know.
And until I get to work with people, and sometimes well after, if that's their preference, I'm a full script guy. I'm not, the so-called Marvel style. Right. I've been desperate once or twice and given a few pages that way.
Sure.
But I'm not built like that.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say was, whereas I learned, say as a teenager that, I'm a writer. Okay, more control, get to pump out some story, and for me, writing is, and you tell me what you think. When you're a kid, you play with toys, and you get to jump in the middle of a fight, and in your head you're playing out the dynamic. As you get older, well, you're not playing with toys, but you're getting deeper into the story. So now it's still playing, but now I'm actually telling you all the minor details that make this moment so cool.
Sure.
It's like an extension of your childhood playing with toys.
Yeah.
How do I say it? Okay, so you realize you want to be a writer. How do you become a writer? Like, how did you go from being a kid playing with toys to where you are, say, today? Like, what was your big, breakthrough, I'd say?
First one was third grade. We had to make a fake newspaper.
Okay.
And so I reported on the little league teams, and then the major league teams, and that, and stuff that was going on at school. And it was just one of those yellow lined paper sheets on and that. But I remember putting in a masthead.
Okay.
And listing the kid that I didn't like as the janitor. and I really liked that. That was really great. And I probably not too long after that started really concentrating on trying to do my homework better in writing, the written part of it. I had a few relatives at a distance. So I would write letters to them, and the early ones are atrocious, and they're sweet, but
Sure.
But then when I saw Star Wars, I knew the minute I walked out of the theater what I was doing.
Really?
Yeah, literally, the doors open. Showcase East, which is no longer there in Pittsburgh, was the first multiplex in Pittsburgh. Our neighbor's dad drove all of us kids in the family truckster over there, and we saw it, and it was a daytime show. It wasn't the day it came out; it was the Saturday after, and I didn't have any pretense of writing that kind of story.
Sure.
But I just knew I was going to be a writer.
Wow.
Doors open, sun shone down, clouds pulled back, angels sang, and absolutely knew. And everything from that point creatively was working toward that in fits and spurts. Nothing happened magic, nothing happened right away. But I did, well, I shouldn't say nothing happened right away. Started high school, immediately got on the school paper.
Okay, that was right.
And
you
started
that.
And started reviewing movies.
Okay.
And I really liked that. I really liked trying to figure out why something was good. Like everybody else starting out, was more trying to impose myself on why I liked it or didn't like it, and moved to Texas in the middle of my junior year and got on the school paper there and kept working. And the meeting right before our senior year started, the faculty advisor said, and our editor for this year will be Jeff. And I looked around for who the hell is the other Jeff on staff. I had no idea there was another Jeff. And then I realized everybody was looking at me like, oh, okay. I was writing a lot more poetry and fiction at that time. Went to my local junior college, got on as a staff reporter. 3 weeks later, was a page editor. Semester later was entertainment editor. Semester later was managing editor. So that brought me into design as well as writing. And that probably my favorite job up until the job I have now, designing the newspaper. And that was in the days of physical layout where you were manipulating pay stubs and things like that. And I think that's how I learned very quickly my aesthetics. They probably still carry on to this day. I did a little bit of photography with that. And so learned to write fast. Like seriously, we had one page too many made up. And our faculty advisor, and I had tickets. I literally had tickets. I'm from Pittsburgh. I live in Dallas now. The Pittsburgh Symphony is there. They've just come back from this European tour that made them a world-class orchestra. And we have one page too many because somebody didn't follow directions. And so he makes us make up 3 more pages, not save one.
Oh.
And I'm sweating whether I'm going to make. Well, you can go to the symphony anytime, and like literally.
No, I can't. No.
And I'm pretty much a rock and roll guy, so for me to have tickets for the symphony, it was a big deal.
Sure.
And that's when I learned how fast I could really write. One of the pages, we did up the assignments. I gave myself one of the pages, and I had this article that I had done the research on already. I wrote it. I gave it we had a person who was called typesetter, and she knocked it out. I took it over, I cut it up, spaced it out, and how am I going to fill up the rest of this page? So then I get out a set of crayons and because it was an article about the students who were going to be teachers.
Okay.
Ran a daycare on our campus. And it was all about this. And we only had 2 photos, and they weren't big enough to be blown up. So I did a kid's drawing to go with, which is good because that's about my level of talent. And I did a kid's drawing to do with that, and I had all of this done in like say an hour and 15 minutes, and the other pages came together, and I got out of there in time and made the show.
I'm actually sweating for you hearing the story.
Yeah,
I feel that stress.
Yeah, and that's where I learned that I actually really like deadlines.
Yeah.
I had one this morning that the editor was working remotely, and she told me I could have until the end of the day yesterday. Well, end of the day means first thing in the morning to me.
Right. Sure.
Because end of the day means you're not going to be sitting there laying it out.
Yep.
And because I run my stuff through my editorial staff before I ever send it in, my stuff comes in pretty golden. You know, you don't have to mess with it.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I totally forgot of it. Looked at my notepad at 8:15 this morning, and 5 till 9, my assistant editor had it, and she sent it back to me, and 9:15 that was turned in the art before I turned in the article, and I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
1,000 words.
Now, when you go from school, when do you start pitching to, say, big names like TV show ideas or comic ideas? Because that's the big one. I mean, that's
Yeah, you know what it is. It is, and I shouldn't gloss over it. It's a really fortuitous series of events. I'll try and give it to you in condensed form because I can go on and on about this. The main thing is that I never lost my love of comic books. I didn't have that period where I grew out of it. I might have been about to be there in my 20s, and then Valiant came along. And I had believed all the crap that was said about Jim Shooter when he departed Marvel. And like most zealots, I'm a convert. I was avoiding Valiant, and then I saw an ad for Barry Windsor Smith's cover for X-O Man of War #5. I'm like, crap, I'm going to buy that. I was like disgusted because I was really as close to out of comics as I was getting ever. And by the time it actually came out, when the ad was running, X-O4 was on the stands. By the time X-O5 came out, I had everything that Valiant had put out.
Wow.
And I realized so many things about storytelling. My understanding of it took such a leap because so much of their art, now they had Barry Windsor Smith and they had Bob Layden inking him, and they were producing some great stuff, but their average art was average.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And even David Lapham wasn't yet David Lapham.
Right.
Not that there's anything bad with his stuff, but it's just he's a newbie.
Sure.
And that's when I realized, you know what? I'm not saying this because I'm a writer. The story is more important than the art, even in comic books.
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't mean you can have crappy art, but if your art's good with a great story, the comics can be great.
Yep.
And so I decide, you know what? I've got a decent career going with Avis Rent-A-Car and all that, but I really want to write. And then I got to the point where I was afraid not to write. And at the same time, I met my better half, Rosina. And she went to Jim Shooter's How to Do Comics seminars.
Oh.
And she had no interest in this except for me. And she met Jim's marketing guy, Clark Smith, and said, hey, my boyfriend wants to get out of the business world and into comics. And I just heard you say that you came from Wall Street and you're in comics now. So would you mind talking to him? And he says, sure, but there's no work. I call him up. First thing he says to me, there's no work. I said, I just want to pick your brain. And he says, okay. And I said, well, I'm coming to New York in a couple of weeks. And he says, okay, but there's no work. Okay. So I meet him in person. They introduce me. I shake hands. As we're shaking hands, he says, "There's no work." And so I left with an assignment.
How?
I don't believe the thing. All we need is a level playing field. All I need is in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew the material.
Okay.
Unlike, this is the thing, and you have to have experienced this. When you can stop, or not stop, but when you can turn down the fan and turn up the professional.
Yes.
You have to know when to do that, and learning that's a painful process because we're all awkward.
Sure.
And everything else like that. But when you get there and can conduct yourself with expertise about more than just, I love
your stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it's more than that, when you are, I'm a big analogy guy. So
Sure. Yeah.
when it's the quickest shorthand about how to communicate with people,
right.
Establish a good rapport and all that, when you can figure out what they're into and talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, Clark, a few months later at San Diego Comic-Con, Clark, which was the first Comic-Con, the first time I ever went to San Diego, and the first one that a comic publisher got me into. They gave me the tickets.
That's neat.
Which was really cool, and I've been to every one since. The greatest thing about that was he introduced me to Bob and Carol Overstreet.
Okay.
And not all that long later, I started freelancing for them. And not all that long later, they sold their company to Steve Jeppy. And they moved, and a bunch of their employees moved, but not all of their employees wanted to move from Tennessee to Maryland. And I'm like, I'll go.
Yeah, that's closer to home.
And I really walked in. Matter of fact, the greatest part about it, I called Rosina at 8 o'clock that morning, right before my interview was at 9. And I said, "Am I taking this job?" And she says, "You haven't been offered it yet." I got the interview. I'm getting the job. And and it was 24 years on Thursday.
Huh. Wow. And
Yeah.
so because you're there, that's kind of opened up a lot of avenues.
Oh, yeah. Listen, I think part of it is you have to maintain your genuine love of the thing you're doing. You can't always be looking for what the next thing is.
Right.
But I also have an advantage that a lot of people don't have, which is I love my day job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm looking to do more. I'm not looking to run away from it.
Right. And on the other side of it, and again, this is sincere, your writing work, and I use the Stargate stuff in particular, it's not your second thing. It's not, it's just as much your passion
absolutely.
as the Overstreet stuff, and it shows because you take the time to do the little ums and the and the remember they mentioned this in the case report from SG-1's mission? You did that on one of them, and I went, very good.
Yeah.
You didn't have to. You could have just said, I know.
That's one of, the great thing is that Mark excels at that kind of stuff. When we start doing that, he's great at the callbacks to this. And I'm pretty good at figuring out how to fit it into the dialogue.
Yeah, and it's natural too.
But see, that's how those shows worked. The military people, for the most part. Now it's interesting on SGU because the further they get away, the less this is true. But the military people behave like military people.
Right.
Even Daniel on SG-1, by association, might be, if he was left on Earth to his own devices, he's the anti-military rebel. He's the more liberal of the characters. He's the more, all this kind of stuff.
The bleeding heart. And,
right. Yeah. Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Seems like he can handle a machine gun.
Eventually, right?
Right.
And that was that big arc, because remember the end of the first season, he's shooting and he gets shot because he doesn't know how to shoot a gun well enough. And then they happen to mention that Jack was on him to learn from then on. Like, no, you're going to learn. And you're right. He became quite the soldier.
Where you see, again, we go back to cable series, which they've got a whole season to develop something, right? Where you're not fired after 2 episodes because the ratings weren't bad. We bought this whole season. It's airing regardless. Tell the arc, right? I just made my way through the closer again.
Okay.
And I'd come in the middle of that series originally, and then continued on to Major Crimes, which I really liked. But what really jumps out at me is at the beginning of the first season, they all hate her.
Yep.
And through the course of the year, sort of one by one, but even then they don't like her, and then somebody challenges her, and they sort of rally around, and the dynamic of the show is totally different after that point. And I thought, the joy as a writer to know that you've got the season to do that.
Yeah.
And that we get that with the streaming services. We get that, and we get that with a lot of cable, but it's much harder for the networks to make that kind of commitment.
Right.
And it's different on SG-1, but you do see Jack and Tilk becoming closer. You see Carter still having to prove stuff as a woman to other people, but not usually to the team.
Right.
She gets there pretty quick. Daniel, we were just talking about, changes. I mean, he's philosophically, he probably hasn't changed that much, but he's also in the mature sense of realizing that it's not all black and white.
Right. Because he was in the beginning. I remember thinking, boy, he's doing an excellent job of Spader's Daniel, and I hated that guy. He was such a whiny, like we said, liberal, bleeding heart, not realistic. Where Jack has to come in and go, no, you don't walk up to a bad guy and go to shake their hand. We don't know these people. Keep your hand on your weapon. Yeah. And he's much more practical. He's not mean-spirited. He's just thinking,
you deal with the practical experience. And then I think if you carry that forward a few seasons, you have a very reasonable expectation of how that character or those characters will act in a given situation, even if it's a situation they haven't faced before. So, okay, let's carry that forward. That framework drops onto Stargate Atlantis. That framework, to a lesser extent, drops onto SGU. We're introduced to a handful of the same characters and many new characters. And Atlantis has stronger ties to Earth. They get more and more tangential on SGU as Destiny goes further and further out into space. But they've given us this framework that, like I said, the characters, you have a reasonable expectation of how they would act, even if it's a situation that you could be proposing an entirely new situation. Like we really loved the Aliens and the Daedalus variation. But we was like, because they were so not completed. Right. They gave us the most latitude as creative people to fill in the backstory. Yep. And then we get this, what to us was a crazy idea, which was, what if they were created by an alternate Janus? Yeah. And Janus is a good guy. What if we make him a bad guy? And oh man, we had a Russian fan, man. He was really mad at us for making Janus a bad guy. Why? Because he was such a good guy and we were ruining it. Oh, okay. And it was just like, wow. Yeah. You know what? On the other hand, least people are caring about the characters you use.
Exactly. And it's not even a team member. It's a guy who showed up on a couple episodes.
Yeah.
Like there's such leeway that you can. What about? Hey,
this is one of the things, and Stargate fans are not immune to this. You see this. You see the most caustic version of this with the Star Wars fans, which is nothing's good enough, and they don't want any changes, but they want new material.
Right. Yes.
And it is. It really is an either or. One of the things that we've had with this great show is that characters evolve. We know that Jack doesn't like to talk about his son, but he would talk about it with Carter. He would talk about it with Daniel. He would have talked about it with Tilk if Tilk talked about such things. And quietly and not a lot. But it would the discussion could have happened.
Sure, and probably did off screen.
And also, it was probably more likely that Daniel talked to Carter than Daniel talked to Jack about it. Because Jack is
intimidating.
As jovially as he was portrayed, Jack was still had that all business switch that he threw.
Yep.
And all that. So okay, let's bring it over to SGA. You get this magnificent bit of writing of taking Robert Picardo's character from annoying,
evil, almost
to borderline.
Yes,
certainly. Yeah. To a genuine leader.
Right.
And Mark wrote this line in Back to Pegasus about, don't you feel more at home out there? Basically, he and John Shepard were talking, and I could totally hear it when Mark said it. We were in his place in Los Angeles when he said it, and I go, oh yeah, and then here's the reply and blah, 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 blah. You know, and it really comes down to, just like a tuning fork, when it sounds right, and so if he'd come up with a line or I'd come up with a line, being able to do the replies to it, it was pretty natural.
Right.
And based, your reaction, the guys I've told you about giving me the great reactions, I really felt good about it. And then, we were able to carry, basically, we did 12 issues, and it was all one big story. Ideally, if you gave me the budget, it's 2 movies.
Sure. Without a doubt. And it's funny because it read that way when they go, okay, this is the end of that issue. I'm like, no, it's not. Because next month you're going to call it a different subtitle. But
I hated that. That's a comic book trope. We sort of ignored that with SGU.
Yeah.
And we turned in the script for number 4 as SGU number 4.
Well, I'm at the part where now they're selling, I don't know how many issues came out, 3 maybe, where it's half SGA and half SGU.
There was one shot,
which I just read,
and then there was three issues.
Those are what I have
of the ongoing.
Yeah, and then what? They just stopped?
Yeah, they their license is up. American Mythology, and MGM has not given them a yes or no. They've made a very good proposal. The one thing I won't do, I'm not going to bash MGM or anything like that. They may have their reasons. But I will tell you, honestly, as a fan, as a creator, as a business person, I don't understand these reasons.
Right. Well, that's what I was just about to say. What is your take on the standstill of MGM? Because I don't know, you were probably part of it. I had Paul on right the night before we did this whole Twitter push where we tweeted and it became trending, number 1 trending, blah, 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 blah. No reply whatsoever. So that's frustrating. But then in the back of my head, I'm thinking, you must know. Somebody at MGM has to be reading their tweets and be sick of us now to go, we got something planned, but we can't say anything.
Let me say that I'm aware of things that have been proposed. I'm aware of things that may or may not really be in the offering. And I'm aware of a certain faction of really devoted people within MGM that really want something to happen.
Okay.
That's good. MGM, if we can step aside from the current situation, MGM has a corporate history that is strewn with ownership changes and financial issues and things like that. And, gone are the days where it was a big physical studio with a huge backlot and, this amazing legacy. And now, like most of the things that you see studio in front of, it's an intellectual property holding company. They have an enormous number of great franchises. And we, of course, want them to work on Stargate all the time right now. They may have to do other things to pay the rent, where we're more suspect. We shouldn't be. I mean, take just the original series, and we're talking the longest running science fiction show on American television. And I never want to be one of those people who bash them, but I will be candid about the stuff I don't understand.
Right.
And to me, there's two things. One, it's a corporate decision or lack thereof. And it's okay, because let's face it, Lucasfilm has tried it and more or less succeeded, but not always, with their story group. So the comics don't contradict the novels, don't contradict the video games, don't contradict the movies, right? We have nothing to do with the novels other than liking those people.
Right.
We don't have anything to do with the video games or anything else about it. So they wouldn't let us call, like, if you look at Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that they did that great run at Dark Horse Comics. They were season this, season that.
Yep.
So right? And Joss Whedon, had his hand in it, but he wasn't writing all of them or anything else like that. But they had some great writers.
Yeah.
Jim Kruger, Christos Gage, all that. Well, we really wanted to call this season 6 of SGA.
Okay.
And look at how we wrote it.
Without a doubt.
And they were very concerned that it would be interpreted as official if we did that. And I think, well, then you write a memo and say it's not official anymore. Look at what Lucasfilm did with what did they throw the tag on? Legacy. We're starting fresh from this point. All the other stuff may or may not have happened. Right. Because it's a business, that kind of stuff happens. But if the business is catering to the fans, don't you think it would have been okay for us to say season 6? Come on, it would have been fun.
Yeah, that's what I remember. That was the big controversy too, because they're like, "This is so good, but is it official or not?" And then the ending was, "We don't. They haven't officially said it is." So I'm like, yeah. Until they actually continue the story to contradict it, it is.
And guess what? All these people are how many years older than they were back then?
Exactly.
And are they really getting Jason Momoa for a TV show at this point?
Right.
Yeah,
he could say he went back to his planet at the end.
Right.
Agreed.
And so there's also, like I said, there's also that negative aspect where you have some fans that say they're diehard fans of Stargate Atlantis that won't look at a comic, and they've got other fans who don't want anything to change, but they want new stuff. When we've had this shows, and every show set around a Stargate has had characters mature.
Right.
Some of them die.
Yes.
And man, I think they missed an opportunity with us. That's
without a doubt.
But let me say this right now. It didn't stop any of the stories we wanted to tell. Didn't cause them any. I got to say, for all the hoops the artist had to jump through, the pushback on our stuff was not large.
Right.
I don't want to say it was easy, because some of it was, what are they doing now? And then we'd work around it and then we'd come up with something better. And that. But some of it was really pretty easy.
Sure.
And because we knew the stuff.
Yep, that was crucial. And like I said, the previous stuff should have been easy. It should have been. It was what the first Stargate SG-1 comics came out during maybe season 9.
Well,
and then
they had the stuff that came. I don't know when the stuff from Avatar came out. Avatar had Stargate, and then Dynamite had Stargate.
Right.
And I saw there was an SG-1 miniseries. This is like way inside baseball stuff here. My pal Jim Kohoric, who I worked on Battlestar Galactica with, got the gig writing SG-1, and a guy named Renato Guedes, a Brazilian, was doing the art, and I saw the pencils come in, I saw the inks come in, and I looked at my friend and I said, "Dude, this is the comic that makes you. This is really good." And I was lucky enough. I had Renato on two of the 24 one shots. Particularly the second one, 24 Midnight Sun, is one of the best looking comics I've ever had. It was freaking beautiful and gritty and just killer. But anyway, so I see Renato's on the art, and typically at that stage in his career, he'd color himself. So I thought Jim was golden. I thought this is the book that makes his career. This is it. When I saw the finished color product, the nicest thing I could say about it was they had really, really, really white teeth.
Yes, I know the issues. I know what you're talking about.
And they were and I have to tell you, having seen the line art.
Oh yeah.
I literally felt so bad for my friend, because now he eventually goes on to write Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, and we were calling him Jim Back to Press Kohoric because he was selling so well. So, it's not all boo-hoo here.
Yeah.
And of course, he wrote a defining run on Army of Darkness for Dynamite. But like I said, that was, he had years from what I thought was his breakthrough to when he really established himself. And as a writer, that's just painful to watch, let alone experience.
And I remember those issues were a lot of promise, but they didn't do the compacting, the dialogue.
They did. Well, here's the thing. I think after the first issue, I really think he had the wind taken out of his sails.
Oh yeah.
I don't blame Jim for it at all, because when I saw the color of the first issue, I was heartbroken for him. It just as a writer, how do you pick yourself up and make yourself do the work again? Yeah.
Is that the one? Now, I don't know if you remember. The first issue is them in the woods fighting Jaffa, coming through the gate.
What's going on. But truthfully, it's like a bad car wreck. You sort of try and forget it.
But I mean, that was the first Stargate comic.
Yeah, that seems right. And and Jim's such a good writer that it would have gone someplace good.
Yeah.
Even if literally, whether you like how it starts or not, it would have gone someplace good. But then you come along and sweep the guy's legs out from underneath him. It's just miserable.
Yeah. But, well, I'll tell you, I'm thankful for your work.
Oh man, I appreciate that. And you know what? One of the greatest things that happened to us was going to GateCon and talking with fans there, and both the experience of people buying the trade paperback and then reading it that night and coming back the next day. Because that's one of the things we don't get as writers, is that
instant feedback.
The immediate gratification. And then the other people who said, "Oh, I've got a couple issues of this, but I wanted the whole thing. Let me get this." And that was really cool. And people who definitely wanted there to be more.
I was hoping this would go on forever, because I'm like, they got it. Perfect. Keep going.
We not only have more stories to tell. I will. Okay, one thing I'm going to say about MGM did not want us to leave it hanging.
Sure.
And I think what they wanted was us to not imply that American Mythology was necessarily doing more comics. I wanted to, how like Star Trek: The Motion Picture ended with the phrase "The adventure continues."
Sure.
I wanted to leave it with that kind of vibe, like, these are the people we know. They're going off on another mission. You can imagine what happens.
Sure. Yeah.
Way I wrote it was not what came out.
Okay.
They changed the last page. If you remember how Atlantis ends, Todd, the Wraith, calls them.
Yes.
He says, "I want to talk to you about your Lieutenant Ford."
Yes.
And that didn't make it. It got cut out.
And
I even showed the script because I was so proud of it. I showed the script to Rainbow Sun Franks and said, "Hey, we haven't forgot you."
that was the picture where he put his own picture over.
No, that actually was a little bit later. That was that was great. He tore up one of his own 8x10s and cut out his photo, and I had no idea what he was doing. And then he holds it up and puts it over the cover, the head of John Shepard. Yeah. So it should have been him on the cover, which was really great. It made for a great photo too. But hanging out, talking to them at the show, and then we got to hang out with them in the bar afterwards.
Always.
And just sitting there talking to a bunch of the guys and realizing that they were all pretty likable people too, in addition to being characters we liked. And that's not automatic. Sure. Sometimes they're really good actors and they're assholes.
Right. I know. All the Stargate people that we've met have always been salt of the earth, wonderful people.
That's great. It really is good. So, but getting the feedback from the fans in person was terrific there. Yeah. And, now the 2 trade paperbacks of the Atlantis stuff are out. The 1 trade paperback of the Universe stuff is out. I've got to say, I really hope that they go back with American mythology and do the license again.
Me too.
Because if you look at the first of the anthology one-shots that has the both Atlantis and Universe in it, if you read the Atlantis story in the one-shot, it falls 2 weeks before back to Pegasus.
Pegasus, yeah. Huh.
And I'd love to see that included in the trade paperback.
Oh, definitely, without a doubt.
And on Universe, the story, which was the first time I got to write Camille, which was real special to me, takes place literally when she's about to get in the suspended animation chamber, the hyperpod, whatever they call it. Yeah. I got it wrong every time, and we'd always get a note from MGM.
Wow, they actually paid that close attention.
Yeah, actually, they did. In that regard, that was very good. I think that but the whole thing took place from basically the time she got in the chamber to when she closed her eyes.
Okay,
and it's a lot of flashbacks and stuff like that. But it immediately sets up what it becomes the story in number 1.
Yeah. Man, see, I hope you're right too, and I hope they get SG-1 and we can see some more of that.
And then I wouldn't mind if they dropped the Chuck and Walter story from have you read that yet?
Oh yeah, where they're stuck off planet.
Well, but have you, in the anthology, have you read the three anthology issues?
No, not yet.
Okay. I don't want to ruin it, but just say there's Chuck and Walter, the Untold Story.
Okay, that's neat. I'm looking forward to that.
And I would really like that to be tagged on to the second Atlantis trade.
Yeah.
Because it was definitely written with that in mind. I actually wanted that to be use a bunch of the art from the other and make it a multi-part thing.
Okay.
So you'd see this stuff you're already familiar with, and then boom, there's this new page, that kind of stuff like that. They didn't like the reprint idea.
Really?
They don't know the people at Disney, apparently.
Yeah.
But the people at Disney who taught me the phrase repurposed archival content.
Mm-hmm.
I would say reprints.
Right.
But the SGU story in the 3 issues of the anthology is 3 parts.
Okay.
And I'd love to see that in a single issue because it's a poker game.
Okay.
And with tons of flashbacks.
Okay, that's
I hope some character insight.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned Ford. Him and Jonas are the 2 that got the short end of the stick because Ford got like, wait, there's no reason that he has to disappear. Oh, you made him a bad guy. Oh, okay, because you.
And then he pops up in that like dream sort of cameo.
Yeah.
And that's the last time we see him.
And he had such great potential.
And especially, like how they wrote him off ended up leaving us as writers with a crap load of potential.
Right.
And I had such fun talking to him that I really wanted to do it. We had already written it before I ever met him. We had already written that was the cliffhanger we left them on, with them going off to find Ford.
Yeah.
And,
and then Jonas, they didn't.
How could they have not brought Jonas back further for the series that goes years beyond that?
Right.
And I have. All right, I'm not going to spin my wheels here. I'm just going to say that if by some miracle I get my hands on SG-1, that will be rectified.
I'm with you. I am with you. I'm going to do it in my series too when it feels natural and appropriate. But okay, Daniel's back. Well, that doesn't mean that Jonas has to go, because now you're saying he was Daniel's replacement, even though he's his own character.
Yeah.
Put him in the back and let him be the research assistant.
Yeah, here's the thing, where our fictional reality intersects with reality and budgets.
Sure.
And that's how stuff. And I don't blame people for how it happens, and I don't know actors' personal feelings or anything else like that. I'm not privy to that in this case. Maybe somebody doesn't want to come back and be a guest star on a show they've been a star of. That wouldn't be the first person like that. And I don't think anything less or anything more of them if that's the case.
Sure.
That said, we as people who love the characters, and Jonas was a great left field choice when they had to have a replacement.
Yeah.
It was really good. And of course he's a fun actor.
Yeah.
And has a pretty darn good range. And I think there was a lot more potential there that they didn't touch on. I think that listen, man, I know there's people that really do grumble about 9 and 10. Okay. I'm not naive, but if you go back and really binge like I just did, and then pay attention to the origin details, not bad, man. The origin's great. It's substantially better than I remembered, and I didn't hate it at the time, but I actually really like it now.
Oh yeah, they were good philosophical bad guys.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
And I think one of the things that's the most unfortunate is we didn't get to see Atlantis in any way get beyond the Wraith.
Right.
And we would have.
Yep. With the villains that you used were so exciting. I'm like, what? Yeah. They should have brought them back sooner.
Well, one of the things about that is whatever reason that really resonated with Mark. I mean, he said that like right away that we should use them. And we actually came up with the name for their race. But I don't think it ever made it in, and now I can't remember what it was.
Yeah. The cool other bad guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, literally in the script, the DV aliens, Daedalus variation aliens.
Sure.
And
go ahead.
And we did do something that they didn't do, which was we created a hierarchy among them. That there were other models of it. We had a component of sort of Borg-like.
I was going to say Borg, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're fascinated with the Borg. I'm not a particularly big Next Gen fan, but I got to write an essay in the hardcover that collected the comic strip, the second volume, because there's one of the storylines in there. It may have been Larry Niven, may have been somebody else. It's definitely the proto Borg story, and whether the guys writing the TV show with Roddenberry or not knew it, it was done first, clear, far and away, and it had many Borg elements in it.
That's neat.
And so, and the Star Trek newspaper strip is not the high water of American comic strip,
Right.
but it is. It's a great. It's hard to say forgotten Star Trek about anything,
Sure.
but
Sure.
it was really cool.
What with the Jonas thing, you're talking about? Oh, you know, maybe he wouldn't come back as much as the actor part of it.
Yeah.
I already, being the writer, I already have it figured out. Daniel's there. They do a scene where he's like, "Well, you're going to stick around. You're going to be you're staying, right?" Have him be the research guy. That doesn't mean we have to necessarily even see him, but to know that he's still there.
Yeah. Go back,
you know what I mean?
Go back to 200, where they say, you keep mentioning him.
Right. Yeah, he's there. But remember, Corin Nemec wrote his comeback episode.
Yeah.
So he would have, shown up.
I one thing I don't want to do, I don't want to make presumptions or stuff like that. But yeah,
right.
To me, I don't know how they don't do that. That's
right.
That's
right.
just
right.
me being a writer and me being a fan.
I'm just doing the loophole, like, okay, so let's take our reality out of it as far as paying an actor or whatever. How do you still make the fans happy? Well, he's still there.
Yeah, and as long as you can do it in a way that's not pandering.
Yes,
I've read books where it feels like I'm being elbowed in the ribs. You see what I'm doing here? You see, and I don't enjoy that at all. And the more mature as a writer that I get, which is the only time I use the phrase more mature about myself, the more mature I get, the more I would say I really hate that. Mm-hmm. So I want it to feel like a genuine experience. Like, oh, it's cool that they're using this character.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it makes sense. Like, oh, all right. Yeah.
If I could come up with an SG team that included Jonas
mm-hmm.
and the alternate reality Dr. Frasier.
Okay. Sure.
And a couple other things. Man, if I had a story for that, I'd already have written it whether I was getting paid or not,
I'm with you. It is a vocation.
But so I guess sort of summing up the Atlantis thing. We had more stories to tell. We certainly are willing to tell them, mm-hmm. and perhaps even enthusiastic.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's wait and see. Now, like I said, I'm very conscious of business decisions, and MGM could have a dozen really good reasons that they just don't want to tell us.
Sure.
Sure. And business world being business world, they also could be silly reasons. I don't know.
Right.
And quite frankly, it's their business. They own it. I don't. As much as we as fans get territorial, that just like sports fans, they say, "Oh, we beat them." Well, we didn't do it.
We didn't do it. We
beat them, right?
Yeah.
You've got all that. You got all that going on. We'd love to do this, and bluntly, I'd love to get my hands on SG1. I mean,
yes.
even if it was just one story, I'd love to do it.
Still, I know.
The funny thing is that we were just sort of resuscitating SGU so we could get to where we could tell some science fiction, mm-hmm. which is where the show was headed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there was going to be actual science fiction actually occurring, not just running, jumping, shooting.
Sure.
And we needed to get them out of suspended animation to do it.
Right.
We did that story. We really liked the story we came up with. It was a lot of fun. And dialoguing, like I said early on, dialoguing Camille was a blast for me.
Oh, yeah.
And really enjoyed that.
Did she read it?
I know that she's aware of the some of the photo covers. I don't know whether she picked them up or not. Mm-hmm. It was so funny. Last time that she was here in New York for the New York Comic Con, we were at the same convention center, texting each other and even calling each other on the phone, and we didn't get together. And, and now she's back working on S.H.I.E.L.D. and working a gazillion hours. So I haven't spoken with her about it. I have a set, just in case she doesn't have them. I have a set that's stashed in my my stuff.
I gave Joe Flanagan his first Stargate Atlantis comic.
Did you really?
Yep. We'd always go to the, is it Shore Leave, I guess, when they just started to do them again, but they were the official Stargate conventions in New Jersey. And, I've met everybody except I haven't gotten to meet Amanda Tapping or Corin Nemec in person yet. Richard Dean Anderson, coincidentally, I met 2 years ago at a different convention that was more general.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, they come around to the table, and if you get to spend some time with them, and if you're lucky like we are, there's the time after the convention where you're just hanging out in the bar or in the lobby, and if you're normal people, you get to make friends with them.
Yeah.
Well, he's sitting there, and I had him sign, instead of getting a picture, well, I have the photocopies of the comics, sign those. And he saw it. He goes, "Whoa, they have this?" I said, "Yeah, I never knew these existed." So next time I saw him later on that weekend, I said, "I have something for you." And I happened to bring an extra one. And I say, he's like, "Really? You really want to give this up?" I'm like, "I have two." Wow. So I forgot all about that. He was thrilled. I don't know if it was a picture cover or an art cover, but it was like,
well, the art cover on number one, which we ended up using, I think, for the trade, was a great painting by my pal and frequent collaborator Mark Wheatley. Then there were some good photo covers on. There were some good photo covers on that series too. Yeah. And I'm glad he at least had it, because man, I loved him as Mitchell.
Not
Mitchell. No, sorry. You can tell how tired I am that I said that. Wow.
It's all right. I've done the same mistake.
Shepherd.
Yeah. Well, it's like a kid on Christmas Day. He's like, "Wow, really?" Yes, you can have your Red Ryder BB
It's so
gun.
funny. It's so funny. Like I said early on, I said, I went to my first really big convention with Ming and my best friend Rob, and a couple of years ago, more than a few now, we were walking around. They were still promoting second season of SGU.
Okay.
And we were walking around at Comic-Con, and she was sort of wearing my NYU ball cap, keeping it down low like that. Literally, we walked in the building, took off our sunglasses, and she got recognized. So I gave her my NYU ball cap. Oof. And started walking around, and it was pretty great, because still every 40, 50 feet, somebody would say, "Are you?" And she's like, yeah. And the funniest part of the whole thing was we got down into the comic book dealer portion of the room, and it became like, "Hey Jeff, hey JC," and people didn't know who she was. And she looks at me, and I'm like, "Yeah, but nobody bugs me at dinner."
Right.
Yeah, I'm famous for right here.
That's why I stay in this room. I'm not leaving this room.
But it was, walking around with her, getting gifts for her kids, and talking about how far ahead of the curve were we. We were doing this in the 70s.
Yeah.
79 as a matter of fact.
Oh.
And it was really cool.
Yeah.
And everybody grows up, everybody, goes through life experiences, births, deaths, relationships that succeed, relationships that fail, all that kind of stuff like that. But intrinsically, when you see that the person is the same type of person that you've known all these years, she got bit by the acting bug pretty early, and she is freaking phenomenal at it. But she still is a person who loves to laugh.
Yep.
I ran a panel with one of her castmates, and I said, "Who is the lead?" And the question was, "Who was the least like their character?" And it was Ming, because she said, you can hear her laughing from the parking lot. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much the person I knew in 9th grade.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are the keepers. I mean, I always say, fame is the gateway for us to know them, whoever they are. But if they're decent people and you're decent people, that wall gets lowered immediately, and now you're Jason Momoa and I played guitar in the lobby for 4 hours.
That's great.
Because he remembered me from 2 years before, where my wife and I played at a Stargate convention. And he goes, next time we'll jam. I said, okay. Well, he didn't bring his guitar, but he recognized me. And next thing you know, he runs and gets his slide. And he goes, dude, go get your guitar. And I ran. And we sat. They block off the whole lobby. And we sat there first trading my guitar for 2 hours. And I show him some stuff. He'd show me how to use the slide. And then he goes, you know what? Let's go buy a guitar. You want to go buy a guitar? Okay. Well, his people wouldn't let me go with him or tell me where he was going. So I thought, all right, good enough. I'm happy for the time that we spent. He comes back with the guitar, finds me in the audience, like at somebody else's panel, waits until I'm done and grabs me and goes, I got it. Let's go. And we did another 2 hours sitting in the lobby.
That's just great, man. I just love that stuff like that. And
yeah.
And what's really great was Paul McGillion.
Oh, story there too, but go ahead.
We were at GateCon, and I didn't know that our publisher was having a really bad weekend. They had found out his niece had cancer, that kind of just bad weekend. And Paul calls him up from my phone, so he answers thinking it's me.
Sure. And
what he really gets is Dr. Beckett.
See, that's sweet.
Chewing him out for not having him on the cover. And my buddy was dying, man, by the time he put me back on the phone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was it was a real lift in a bad weekend for him that I didn't even know that.
Sure.
I was just doing it to be funny,
Yeah.
And it was spectacular. And these guys, and I don't mean like them, like they're their lifelong friends, but you can make a pretty good study when you watch people when they don't know when they're being watched. Well, that sounds stalker-like.
No, I know what you mean. When they're natural and their guards down, yeah.
And you can tell something about somebody. It doesn't mean you can read them like a book. It doesn't mean any crap like that.
Right.
But it does. It does really seem like that these shows are populated by actors and other creatives who are decent folks.
Right.
And you know what? Sometimes you want nothing more than the character who plays a character you really like to not be a creep.
Yes. Breaks your heart when they are.
Admittedly, life has caused us to set our bar a little lower than I would like. Yeah. But sometimes when they're just not a jerk, that's like really great.
Right?
All right. I have some writing to do. So
I was just about to say,
let's cap this in 6 minutes.
Actually, let's do it now, because I didn't want to interrupt you, because I'm loving all that we're talking about, but at the same time thinking, like you said, it's late. I can go forever, but like you said, let's cap this and pick it up another time.
I would love to do that.
Right? And then I'll get you on the other one, and we could talk more about this, but also general comic or whatever we want, really. You're on Patreon?
Sorry?
Are you on Patreon?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Okay, I feel like I saw you on
merely Twitter, which I'm a novice at. I am there, but I probably in pushing Vampire PA, Bite Out of Crime, I've probably quintupled my number of tweets previously. And certainly the original ones, I've retweeted a bunch of people, of course. But I'm on Facebook under Jeffrey Vaughn, and some of my creations like Vampire PA, Zombie Proof, The Flight, a few of those have their own thing. I will say this: now that I'm getting sort of serious about getting Vampire PA out there beyond comics and into Hollywood. There's a character in Vampire PA called Scuba Dave that I'm now convinced that Gary Jones has to play.
I saw your post on that. And then he retweeted and commented on it.
Yeah,
he's great. He's another one that I've hung out with, and
it's funny. Mark's hung out with him a couple of times. I've only done it the once, but we've talked to Gary on the phone a bunch about doing some comics.
Okay, that's
and
great.
He has a property that's a really good idea.
Yeah,
and I think that what he needs to do. Free advice from me to Gary. I think what he needs to do is marshal his Stargate fans to do a crowdfunding campaign, because I think it's a great idea. And it's something that if somebody in Hollywood could see it, suddenly they'd think it was a great TV series.
Well, I hope. Hey, they'll support him, definitely.
So, at any rate,
so we got you on Twitter. I want to make sure people can help you.
JC Vaughn 1 on Twitter, and it's VAUGHN. And then Jeffrey Vaughn on Facebook. Just look for the bald guy. I am a regular, recurring co-host or guest host on Crowdfunding Comics, which is a YouTube channel with Billy Tucci and Niall Scala. And, of course, the bread and butter is the Overstreet Comic Book Price Guide, which number 49, I'm already working on number 50. Number 49 comes out July 17th, both at Comic-Con and at shops around North America.
Okay. And the Kickstarter is?
Kickstarter is Vampire PA, Bite Out of Crime. The Kickstarter ends Friday, but literally a half hour later, the Indiegogo starts. It'll go another week. I won't be beating the drums as mercilessly at that because I'll be at a corporate retreat. So our editor, Jason Odom, will be pushing that one to annoy everybody else, and they'll get a break from me, and he'll be doing that, and my buddy Mike Soloff will as well.
Nice. All right. Well, I'll let you go. We'll do this again, and I thank you again for your patience for our technical difficulties. That was.
Hey man, glad to do this. I've gotten to the point where my voice is just about gone, so it's appropriate time for us to wrap up.
Right. All right. I will be in touch. I'll let you know when this posts, and thanks again.
Thanks, man. Talk to you soon.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye. The MacGyver Podcast is part of the Forever Adventure Network. Some original artwork by Joseph Arnold. Donations can be made at Patreon to Mac Jackson. Look for our group pages on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at MacGyver Podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review. And remember, stay creative, everyone.